Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our first USA Cycling quarterly conversation. And just one quick point of clarification. This is a quarterly conversation, not a summit. We'll get into that much later in today's program. Today's program is going to be pretty simple. Right now, we're getting everybody into the meeting. We're going to run through some quick introductions. Mike Ricci is going to talk through solving the coaching puzzle. We're going to do some Q&A with Mike, and then I will go through the state of our coaching development and education program. I'll do some Q&A, and then we should be wrapped up somewhere between 10:30 and 10:45. So thanks all for being with us again. I know it's a big commitment of time on a Friday morning, especially when we all have lots going on. And as I learned this morning, the Giro is starting. And yeah, we'll be doing this right during today's finish. So rolling along, who am I? I am the new Director of Coaching Development and Education with USA Cycling. A little bit about my coaching background. I started working with athletes in 1998 when I was still finishing my undergrad at CU. I went on to coach at Fort Lewis College and CU Boulder in the collegiate ranks immediately after college. I started my business in 2003, and it has been going in various states and forms since that time. I helped start the Boulder Junior Cycling Road program, one of those pieces I'm pretty proud of. It's morphed into something else at this stage, but it was great to be part of a junior development program as it was growing, becoming what it currently is. And over those years, I did have the chance to work with a lot of athletes across a lot of different disciplines, ranges of experience, all the way from your very typical average everyday rider, who is the bulk of my clients, to a couple of national champions, including a pro road national champion, some world tour riders, and an Olympian. Ultimately, I got really sick of writing training plans after 20 years. And so I basically started looking for other things. Along the way, I've done some other projects that have been interesting that will definitely help and influence how I do this job. I had a relatively diverse upbringing in education, which I think over time we'll see factors into this role and where I believe USA Cycling is going in the future. I joined the board of what was then the American Cycling Association. It was a breakaway group from USAC in 2004. 4 years later, I served as was their executive director as a full-time role for 4 years. And from there, I went back into coaching full-time, only to, as we started to all see a slide in available athletes and the kind of decreasing in size and road, starting in 2014-15, I started working with Multisport and doing event services with them across a number of different events throughout the country. And then I ended up working with the Colorado Classic in a pretty robust way between 2017 and 2019. And then pandemic-wise, I got to experiment totally outside the bike world and learned that I really liked the bike world through a role in healthcare sales. And then most recently, I was balancing it out with cycling, just regular old cycling industry sales. With that, that's a quickie bit about me. I really want to get on to our keynote for today, and that's Mike Ricci. Mike is the founder and head of D3 Multisport. He and I have been operating in the same circles for over 20 years here in Boulder, Colorado. And Mike is definitely someone to look towards as having set up in a very sustainable and established business. And I think he's going to provide insights that we can all learn from. And I'm actually looking forward to hearing everything he has to say. And so without further ado, I will hand it off to Mike in the studio.
Hey, thanks, John. Appreciate it. And thanks to USA Cycling for having me, and Fast Talk Labs as well. I can say that, I've been coaching a long time, and certainly some ups and downs with different things going on in the economy, especially now. And went through a dot-com bust in 2000, and all that happened in 2008 with mortgage crisis. And keeping a business up and alive has been challenging. And if you don't learn that side of it, it's tough. And I can say that the business side of it at this point is just as passionate to me as the coaching side, which is really fun. And I'd like to share my experiences and maybe give some of the hard lessons that I learned. And I think you learn more from the defeats and the successes. And, to do this a long time, obviously you have to have more successes than defeats, but it's sharing it and getting people to understand, easier ways to, be successful and lean on some other people. And we'll get to some of that. So just a little quick background on me and my coaching. I started coaching in 1988. I started swim coaching. It was about the same time that I had done my first triathlon. And I was, sorry, missed the slide there. So started swim coaching. And then at the same time, I had walked on the college cross country team at my college. And I hadn't run in high school. I had mostly run track, but tried out cross country because I'd been doing triathlon. And then from there, I was graduated in 92 and started my job in finance. And I was coaching a couple of athletes here and there for free, and just enjoyed the coaching aspect of it, and took a lot of what I knew from swimming and turned it into triathlon. And then with my running background, I knew a little bit about that. And then around 95, I decided that I was just going to make the move to Boulder. Boulder was the place to be if you were a triathlete or endurance athlete at the time. And I came out here and continued working in finance. And then by 2001, I just decided I was going to go for it and try to make a living as a coach. And I can tell you that, I tell the story all the time, but for the first year, I probably stared at the ceiling every night, wondering how I was going to pay the mortgage, pay the bills, and all that stuff. But, eventually it works out. There were a couple key stories in there along the way, but definitely, the struggle was real. And then 2001 or two, I had hired my first coach. And then a couple of years later, I hired 2 more coaches. And then by 2006 or 7, I probably had 7 or 8 coaches working for D3, which was, kind of knew that we were kind of on our way. And then 2009, I started coaching University of Colorado Triathlon team, which is a club team, not an NCAA team. A club team. And I think after the first year we had won, we finished third my first year coaching at nationals, and we won the national title the next 4 years in a row, which was pretty exciting. And I had a girl that I coached that won nationals, and for that I was nominated for coach of the year, and I was awarded that, which, that's a total team thing. It's, coaching is one aspect of it, but you have to have the athletes to do it. And that was a lot of fun for me, but seeing the success of the team was really the bigger piece for me. And then from there, I left CU, and they continued to win. They won 4 more titles, which is awesome. The program was set up pretty well, and a couple of my assistant coaches are still continuing to coach that team, and they do a great job with them. And the quality of the kids that come out of that program every year is just, it's great. So it's great to see that. But let's get back onto the business side of this, and let's talk about how to grow a successful business. And we're going to talk about some key points here. And the first one is really establishing your business framework. And I call this the nuts and bolts. And really this will drive a lot of how your business is going to, who you're going to work with, and, the people that you engage with. So first of all, your company info, who are you, right? That's important. What are your values as a company? What services are you going to provide? And I think this always changes. We started out with one-on-one coaching, and we moved into some training plans on Training Peaks. I do some custom plans for people that it's less touch for the coach. Maybe it's once a month, and I lay out a 12-week plan for athletes. We can talk a little bit about that later, but those kind of things that you can kind of create revenue streams that it's not always the one-to-one, because in that respect, and we'll get to it later, but I think you're a little bit limited in that, right? So determine what services you want to provide. Where you're located is important. I thought that, having the Boulder zip code was important to me. And I can tell you, when I first put up my website in 2000, I thought that everybody in Boulder was going to flock to me, and I was going to coach everybody here. And the first 2 emails I got, one was from Canada and one was from France. And I realized, wow, this web thing is a big deal and I can actually reach people all over the world. So I started thinking beyond locally and started thinking globally. And that's kind of, I think, a big shift for me in terms of, how I thought about the business. And then, lastly, how are you set up legally? LLC, sole proprietorship, S Corp, there's advantages to all, and there's disadvantages to all. And that's where you kind of, talk to a tax accountant to help you with that. I think in writing all this stuff out is really important. All of your goals need to be written out. There's a great Harvard study. I think it was the class of 1978. They took, they polled the class after 10 years, and they said, how many of you had written down your goals? And 1/3 had said they'd written down their goals. 1/3 had thought about it, and 1/3 had said didn't even think about it or write it down. When they reconvened with the group 10 years later, they realized that the people that had thought about their goals had made 30%, making 30% more money than the people of everybody else in the class that didn't even think about their goals. But the people that actually wrote them down were making like 10 times as much money as everybody else. So writing those goals down are huge. And to be successful, I think you have to do that. So I can't see that slide. Is that okay? And that's okay. Yeah, right. Okay. So then I remember, I first started out, I moved in with my girlfriend, and I was sitting in, she had a place in Louisville, and I'm sitting there in the basement every day, and she was going off to her job, and I'm sitting in the basement trying to get this business going. And I'm thinking about, who do I want to work with? How do I get this to work? And really just writing down all these values of what I wanted the company to be and who I wanted to work with was a huge piece of this. And that's when I was able to write out my mission statement, which you can read up there. All right, thanks. Just yeah. All right. So once you have a mission statement written out, that's really your roadmap for everything. The why. You have to feel it in your mission statement. If you don't feel it, then maybe it needs to be rewritten or something added to it. It took me a long time to get it right to what I feel. It doesn't mean it can't be tweaked here and there. It can, but that basis, the foundation of it is important. So. All right. Now, the bigger piece of this is just committing to a process. And I think this is the structure that we all kind of miss on. I think that if you're, coaching 5 to 10 athletes, or you're coaching, if it's a part-time thing and you're coaching 5 to 7 or, whatever, 5 to 10 athletes, or you want to grow a business where you have, 10 or 20, 30 athletes, I think that having a process each week is huge.
Right,
and that's really how
leave for work pretty soon.
I tell you, I think you really got to structure the week. So when I think about this, and, obviously reading a lot of books on business and how to be successful, I think, doing the things that are the hardest the first day of the week is the easiest way to do it. So what I always do is I try to get my schedules done first day of the week, do it on Monday and get it done. And that way there, it kind of sets me up for the week. And then I can think about, okay, what can I work on the business side? Right. And then as you're creating schedules, and I know that in the beginning when I did this, it was really, really a struggle for me to get it during the week, because I was writing content for the website. I'm trying to get in front of new athletes. I'm trying to grow the business. And the last thing I wanted to do was write schedules. And, and John just mentioned that, like 20 years of doing that. But imagine doing that, you got 30 athletes and you're trying to do that. And it's so overwhelming. And the little piece I'll add to this, when I first started out, and as coaches, you'll know this is insane, but I wanted to coach 100 athletes at $100 a month. That was my goal. I wanted to make $10,000 a month my first year. I got to about 53 athletes and I realized this was just not sustainable. And that's when I hired my first coach. And then I got down to about 30, and then I hired another coach and I got to 20. And now at this point I sit at about 10 to 12 a year, which makes my life a lot easier and manageable, because those relationships are important. And you got to maintain them just like any relationship, and trying to have 20 really good relationships is really hard. But that 10 to 12 is kind of that sweet spot for me. And I think, maybe a max of 15 for most people. But, if it's the only thing you do and you don't have anything else to do, then maybe you can get to 20, but it's just, I think it's hard. The other thing that's really important during the week, obviously, is when your athletes complete their workouts. I get a notification on my phone that an athlete's completed a workout. If it's an easy recovery workout, there may not be, a comment from them, or I may not need to comment back. But, I get psyched up when it's an interval workout and I look at it real quick on my phone and I see that they hit the they hit the intervals, the heart rates are right, the cadence is great, all these things are clicking. I want to send them just a quick text or an email back if it's a Sunday morning or Wednesday afternoon, whatever. I don't really limit myself to that. But I want them, and I want to stay engaged with them and they want to know that I care about them. Right. So that's a big thing for me, is just having the ability to just click and say, yeah, that's great. Good job. Make sure you recover, do this, hydrate, protein, get all that stuff done. But that's a huge piece. Answering emails is one of those things where you kind of can get tied up. And for my opinion, once I get the workout set up for the week on Monday, the schedules, I typically start answering emails. And the more information you can give in an email, the more you can help the athlete. Usually the less you get back. If you give them one word answers, you're going to get like why, or you're going to get, all these things that, just going to lead to more emails. But just, lay it out, get the emails done and have a period of time. And I usually do it on Monday morning from like 10 to 12 or something like that. Get most of the weekend emails done and get that done and out of the way. It's important. And the big thing, as you're starting a business or as you're trying to grow, is just creating content. And when we started D3, I made the commitment that we would put out a newsletter every month and there'd be 2 new articles in it. And we've been doing that for 18 or 19 years now. So there are like 600 and I don't even know, I looked the other day, 680 articles on our website, which is an amazing amount of content, but it's just that consistency of every week. I mean, I know there were times like on a New Year's where we didn't have the email out on the 30th or the 31st. And I still was like, it has to go out because I need to have that consistency. And that's like committing to that process, like I'm talking about. But that has allowed us to, be up there in the Google rankings, just having that content. And as times change, right, people don't read as much, and now it's more video, and it's got to be quality video, just like these guys are doing with everything they're doing here at Fast Talk. I mean, it's amazing stuff. But having those quality videos that people are going to watch and see your services and see that you have credibility on a subject, or how your athletes have success, whatever it is, that's important stuff. We just started interviewing our athletes and putting that up, and that's getting some great reviews. And it's just always thinking of new ways to create that content. And I'll tell you a quick story. A while back, we had hired a company from Atlanta. We wanted to make some landing pages for different services we had, and it didn't go that well with the company. It was just it was way too much more money than we wanted to spend, and the quality of it wasn't great. And then I realized like I could do these myself, right? Because the quality of video on the phone had improved, or you can get a GoPro or whatever. And we started these things called the Triathlon Minute, and we made about like 100 of them. Then we just put them out every Friday. Every Friday there would be a new Triathlon Minute, and all it was a coach, one of our 8 coaches, talking for a minute on a subject. And if you had to guess, what the 2 most popular videos are, one is how to clean your cassette, believe it or not. And one of our coaches had a piece of cardboard, and he's running the cassette through the cardboard and just cleaning each cog. And that was amazing. And the second one for triathletes, it was peeing on the bike. And that was another one that was really popular, that athletes wanted to watch it and hear someone talk about, how do you do that? Lastly, you got accounting in here too. I think that's something that, if you can handle that on a weekly basis, like just balance your checkbook and stay on tune on that kind of helps you. And then lastly, I think one of the most important things for your own mental health and your own just happiness, get your own workouts in. And I always feel like that has to be the first thing in the day for me. Even if I start my workday at 9 and I don't start a workout till 7 or 7:30, I think it's important to get that in, even if it's 30 minutes. It just relaxes me and makes me feel a lot less stressed. And just gives me a little bit of okay, I got something done today. Now I can get, take care of my work. And that's important. All right. You scroll that down a little bit. All right. So now we're going to get into building your professional team. So in the beginning, as a business owner, you're a generalist, and you have to be able to do everything. You have to be able to obviously write the schedules and be able to answer the emails, do the marketing, write the content you want on your website. But I think as you grow, and this is kind of where you get those bruises from just having a new business, you gotta lean on people to get some help. And I think that this is where it's a trust thing, right? So I know when I hired, my first coach, it was a big deal to say, okay, here are 10 of my athletes, and let's see how you do coaching them. it's no different than when you give your marketing to somebody and you want them to send the right message. I mean, you have to be super clear on the communication. And it's no different than them writing content for your website or making changes to your website. I actually had a web design. We're doing a web design on our website, and I did a meeting yesterday, and it was hard for me to listen to someone tell me that my idea wasn't the best idea with what I wanted to do, but they're the expert, right? And you have to let it go and say, okay, what they're doing is correct. And, you give it some time. If it's not the way it works, then maybe you change it, but you have to be able to trust. And that's a big thing as a business owner to give up, because you've got all this freedom to run your business, but at the same time, you got to give some of it away, and we'll get to why later, but it's not enough hours in the week. I mean, that's the bottom line. Okay. Scroll that down a little bit. All right. So in the beginning, obviously everything's important. It's where, you develop your bruises, like I said, and you'll definitely have your aha moments about, what you're good at. There are some things, as a triathlon coach, it's a little different than cycling, but there's swimming, there's biking, there's running. As a cycling coach, you have, time trialing, you have road races, you have crits. I mean, some of those things you may be really good at coaching at, and some things you may say, you know what, maybe I can get someone else that can help my guys that are doing crits or help my guys that are doing road races. Maybe I'm really good at time trial, understanding aerodynamics and wheel setup and all that stuff. And at the same time, if I were to say to you as a coach, look at all the different aspects these athletes need today, right? So you have coaching, which is what your strength is. But you have a physio, you have a strength coach, you could have, mental skills coach. We've had that for a number of years now, which helps our athletes. Nutritionist. And as a coach, can you handle all those things, do all of them well? That's really hard to do. So leaning on these other people and saying, yeah, we can hire a nutritionist to help our athletes. We can hire a strength coach to help our athletes. That takes the burden off you. I mean, obviously you want to know all these areas in a general aspect, but I just, it's hard to be, the greatest nutritionist and the greatest coach and the greatest strength coach. It's hard to do all these things. So you got to be able to learn to balance all these things. Okay. So define what you're good at, and really understand that, there are other people that can do things better than you. All right. So moving forward, make sure you don't do everything. Get help on the accounting side, get help on the marketing side. Make sure you got someone that can help you with the website. Yeah, you're right. Go down. And then I think with the rest of it at the bottom there, I think you can fake it till you make it. I think that's a big thing. Just understand that, do a good job at understanding everything, but you don't have to be an expert in everything. That's really the big takeaway there. All right. And I think one of the most important parts of my being able to be successful is that I've had good mentors. I've had people come in that I've coached, and they've been in business, and they've said, look, I like what you're doing, but you could do this better because you could do A, B, and C, or get some help in other aspects. And I think that is just one of those things that, like I said, it's hard to trust those people and trust the ideas of leading other people. But once you can do that, I think that your business will grow. All right. So now as we get to what is your value? And I think there's a few different things here, right? There's how many hours you really want to dedicate to coaching? How many hours do you have to coach? And what number is really going to make it worthwhile for you? If you say, you want to make X, and you do the math that it doesn't work, and we'll do that on another slide coming up here. But the big thing is understanding, what your value really is, and, how do you figure that out? So let me just go to the next slide here. Okay. So let's say you've got 40 hours a week to coach. And let's say, obviously there's four weeks in a month, it's 160 hours a month of time to work. Now, that's annual hours of 2,000. So just bank that number for a second. If you want to make X per hour, we'll just take $1 an hour to make it easy. And you want to work with an athlete. Let's say it takes an hour a week to create a schedule. Then you've got, let's say, 4 times, 30 minutes, 4 30-minute phone calls each week, 4 30-minute phone calls a week. Then you got email replies, right? So that's another couple hours. So let's say it's 5 hours a month per athlete, and that's probably on the low side. And then at that rate of $1 an hour, 5 hours a month, that's $5 for your time to coach. But that doesn't include like the website upkeep, your accounting, your marketing. I mean, you start running out of hours. So if we just scroll up a little bit, we'll see that if you have 10 athletes, that'd be $50 a month at our $1 an hour. 10 athletes at 5 hours per month, 50 hours a month, right? And if you had 30 athletes, it's 150 hours a month, which is almost impossible, right? So that would only leave you with 10 hours a month for marketing, accounting, writing content, video content, just to name a few things. So some athletes are going to take more than your 5 hours, some you're going to take less, but you find that balance in between. And this is kind of where you learn, who you want to work with, just kind of going back to the top of that last slide. And I use this model. I talk about Walmart versus Mercedes-Benz, and this is a whole marketing presentation that I do. But the Walmart versus Mercedes-Benz, if you think about what Walmart does, right? So Walmart sells everything to anybody, and it's usually low cost, and they will serve everybody. Everybody has to go into Walmart to get something, at some point. Mercedes-Benz, now they are marketing to a very specific group of people, and it's a high-end car, and they're only looking to market to a very small percentage of the population. So when you look at that in terms of coaching, you could be a coach who says, okay, I want to be Walmart. I want to coach every single person that'll come to me. And as you start out, that's probably where we all begin. We're just going to coach whoever comes to us. So I talk about that as like an inch deep and 5 miles wide. So you're just going to coach every single person. You're not really going to get too deep into any category. If it's, you got stay-at-home parents, or you have executive, or you have students, you have professionals, you have all different types of athletes in that group. Whereas if you're, take the Mercedes-Benz approach and you say, okay, I'm just going to work with high-level executives. I know they can pay me a good chunk of money, and I know they hang out with the same type of people, and I can keep going deeper and deeper into this group. So with this one, maybe it's 2 inches wide, but it's 5 miles deep, and you keep just going into that group. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. You can work with both groups if you want, but I think when you can narrow down who you really want to work with, I think that helps determine your value. Because then you can say, look, if I'm going to work with just anybody and I'm just going to take the Walmart approach, maybe I'm going to take the low end approach to coaching, and I'm not going to charge a lot of money. Maybe I'm someone that's, it's going to charge the low end of whatever the low end is now. Let's say it's $25 a month or whatever. Whereas you want to be the high end guy, maybe you're going to charge $2,000 a month, because that's what these people will pay, and that's what the market demands. So there's 2 different approaches, I think. And I think that neither one is wrong. You just really have to decide which one you want to be. And that really is what determines your value with that. All right. And yep. So if we let's just take just determine your value again. I just want to kind of get back into that. So let's say, you want to make whatever, $50,000 a year, and all your expenses with your web hosting and your marketing and people writing your content and taking care of all these things for you. Let's say that costs you $10,000 a year. So now you're at, let's say 40,000 a year, and then divided by your 2,000 hours, you're making $20 an hour. So if that's something you think that's where your value is, and that's great. If you think you need to raise it, that's great. If you think it's too much, you can lower it. So in terms of just the value of, you have to go out there and ballpark some expenses before you even get started with this stuff, but then understand, yeah, here's the rate I'm going to charge. And yes, you can tweak it. We're constantly, probably every 18 months we're tweaking our rates. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. It doesn't go down very often with what's going on with the economy, but typically if we have to do something that will help us bring in athletes and bring in clients, then yeah, we have to lower it. And I'll give you a great example. In 2013, we had a little blip in the economy. We probably lost 25% of our business. And I remember we lost all of we'd had 3 different levels of service at the time, and we lost our low end athletes. The people that had disposable income, we kept all the high end people, but the lower people that were probably around, I don't even know if it was $150 a month or whatever was at lower end, they all dropped out. Probably 50 to 80% dropped out. So I had to think, how was I going to, create some more revenue for the business? And what I decided to do was I created these quarterly plans, which were 12-week plans, and I charged people $99 a month. And I think within the first 3 months, I had like 76 people signed up for this. So as a business owner, you got to be creative and you got to think like through the situation of how can I bring people in the door, and what can I do that it's affordable for them, and at the same time that I can, do well on the profit side of it. So if I'm looking at something like $99 a month and I create that 12-week plan and it takes me a couple of hours and I got to talk to them, we set up a once a month phone call, for 2 or 3 hours, you're making, $300 or $400. So that is a value, that tells me that, the value for that coach doing that is worth a couple $100 an hour, which, and something like that in a situation where we're losing clients, we're trying to, make back some profit that we lost. I mean, it's a situation where you just have to be creative and say, okay, how can I make this happen? All right. So I think that this is a great quote I found from Bear Bryant, and it just, speaks to everything where, between dreams and success, there's a lot of hard work that has to go on. There's a lot of times you fall down, a lot of scrapes and bruises, but in the end, if you want to be successful, you have to kind of go through those ups and downs like that. All right. So just to review, I think, starting from the beginning, it's really hard for me to read that there. Yeah. So know your framework. And then know your framework, create your processes. I think that's a huge piece of this, just weekly, monthly, daily, knowing each day what you're going to do each week. Create your professional team around you. Make sure you have, a good accountant. You have someone that can help you with marketing, someone that can help you with legal advice, someone that's good at writing content for your website. And then at the end, you get to define your value and say, what am I worth? And, what is my time worth really? And then lastly, put your plan into action. That's really the main part of this whole thing, is once you have all those 4 pieces in there, put the plan into action. All right. Okay. Left my name up there and email and phone number. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk to you and help you through any issues you have. I love to help coaches, improve their businesses or give them ideas and see if we can help them, improve what they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike, for the time and the info. We would love to take questions. And one of the ones we've already gotten in our chat is, Mike, you mentioned that when you came to Boulder to start your business, that you got clients from Canada and Europe. And Paul is wondering how that happened. What you think was the driving force in that?
That's a great question. I don't know. I remember I paid $75 a month for what was called a tout box at the time on Inside Triathlon. And I put that out there and I got a couple of responses from it. I did send out some emails that I bought at the time. I didn't know what spamming was. And I had bought some email lists and sent out some emails. And I did get a bunch of clients from that too. But I think the web was the big thing, and putting that tout box up for advertising helped a lot. But, I remember just putting the website up and going, who is going to pay me? My prices at the time were $50, $75, and $100 a month. Everybody got the same service. I just, whatever they could pay me. And yeah, I think that the web was really the big piece of this whole thing.
Well, that's a great segue into the next question from Michael. And that's one-on-one versus training plans. Do you feel that Training Peaks hurt your business at all? Or was it an adaptation of your current business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I've partnered with Training Peaks since the beginning. They've been a great partner. I think they've helped our business. The only time we've really have ever had a dip, we sell race specific plans, and we had a dip obviously during COVID when the races were shut down. That's the only time we really have seen a dip, but everything has been pretty consistent with the plan sales. And I think they've helped us more than anything.
Awesome. Let's see. Are there any good tools that you can recommend that help business owners go through defining their mission statement and writing their business plans? That's coming from someone, and that's also this guy right here asking that question as well.
Well, that's a great question. I don't, I really just looked to some of the mentors I had and kind of sought them out into what they thought, what defines a good company. And I think I read a great book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. He's actually based here in Boulder. I think everybody should read that book. Small business, big business, doesn't matter. It really helps define all these things. And there's actually something in there called the flywheel. And it talks about just moving your company in the right direction and understanding once you get that momentum going, you keep it going. But it's just the addition of things along the way, whether it's, hiring great coaches and then getting great results with your athletes and then creating some brand awareness. But the flywheel is one of those things that definitely helps. And I think the mission statement stuff, Good to Great does a great job of just addressing all this stuff and just understanding like what you want your business to be. I think that's really, it's a personal thing on terms of the mission statement.
Yep. Okay. And we've got the flood coming in, which is good. Thanks everybody for jumping in here. When you started hiring coaches, did you bring them on as independent contractors or hire them? And then how has that changed as you hired more coaches?
Great question. So we've always had independent contractors. We still have independent contractors. And we have changed a lot of what we've done. And I didn't get to this in the slides, but around 2009, I was really ready to just ditch the whole assistant coaches because I did not think it was going well. This is one of those ups and down times. But I just turned over the coaches and I brought in coaches that I had actually coached personally or had worked with one of our coaches at D3. And that really helped us because those athletes that became coaches understood the process of how we work, how customer service is huge to us, how quickly we get back to athletes. And having those coaches come in and understand the process was just a game changer for us. And at this point now, I've got 5 coaches that are with us over 10 years. So obviously what we're doing is working.
Awesome. Next one from Lee. Can you discuss justifying your taking of clients? I've thought a lot about this. Compared to the software industry, the coder who is CEO will eventually have to give up coding in order to take the business to the next level. Does the fact that the coaching company CEOs often have clients prevent the business from flourishing? Basically, this is one of those questions that I think a lot of people grapple with, which is how much time do you devote to coaching versus how much time do you devote to actually running your business as your business really starts to grow?
Right. Is he asking about taking the leap to going full time?
I think it's more of that time piece. And because, if you hit a certain point where, in most business development, where someone who may have been the founder and been actively involved in creating something eventually has to move on and turn into an actual executive.
Right. Yeah, that's something definitely struggle with. I feel, that's why I think the processes are important. I feel, I think that I'll always coach athletes, even if it's 3 to 4 to 5. I think you always have to stay in the game to understand the business, especially as new things come down the pike in terms of technology and how we train. That's something that for me, I always want to stay at the forefront of that and understand what's going on. So I'll always have an athlete or 5, or, currently I have 10 to 12 athletes. But as I, eke toward a retirement at some point, I think about what's that going to look like? Is it going to be 3 to 5 athletes? Is it going to be 6, or what's the number, So I think that, I think that is a struggle for someone if they want to run a big time business. But even if you look at some of the bigger businesses like Purple Patch Fitness with Matt Dixon, he still coaches athletes and he has a huge business. And even, Chris Carmichael, he may still be coaching athletes, right? He has a pretty big business. So I think you still coach because you want to stay in the game. You want to keep understanding what's going on. Plus, I think that helps your credibility as a coach, right? You have to keep having some kind of results with your athletes.
Yep, I fully agree. I'm going to jump in and answer this one a little bit too. Just because I'm sure it'll come up at some point, is yes, I still coach a few athletes. And when I say a few, it is definitely a few, but for the exact same reasons, where there's just something about making sure you're staying in touch with the industry you're active in, where it's essential, especially in such a, with the coaching industry being an evolving service-based field. I think there's a piece for anyone that's where it is truly a small business And to be honest, I think most of us qualify in that respect. I don't think any of us are looking at, 500-person companies. So, I think there's a piece of that is definitely essential. Moving along, Joy, can you highlight or describe what are the most important characteristics of a great assistant coach? We have had trouble finding great people and are trying to balance developing versus hiring someone who is established. And I'm guessing this is a common theme for a lot of people in that position. So any feedback is appreciated. And that's from Joy.
Yes, sure. I think first thing, an established coach may not want to give up their business and join another outfit, right? That's always a challenge. To say, hey, you're going to come over here and bring your 15 athletes, or we're going to take a cut of that. That's always hard for them to do. I think developing a coach is a great way to go. And that's why, we've turned to, turning some of our athletes who are really good at understanding, the science of all this and training and being super adaptable to situations and be having that good mindset into coaches. And I think that that's important. Like, if you have to be able to trust the person, and someone that you coach, obviously that's someone you do have a good trusting relationship with. And I think that, for us, at least, that's been a gold mine. It's just, kind of, people don't even know that they'd be good at coaching sometimes, but you can say, look at how you can look at your workouts and really understand what's going on. Look at how you said, how your buddy's doing this and they should be doing that. You can see that. Like, that's a skill. And maybe this is something you could do and take on a handful of athletes. And maybe that's the route you go. Like, look for athletes you coach that you think would be a good coach. And I think that's a good pipeline if you can develop it.
Awesome. Another one of the random questions we have. You mentioned that it's important to create and commit to a process for everything. What are some good ways to reinforce processes to make sure that they are always used for the long term? How do you create a culture that maintains efficient processes?
That's a great question. So I just finished reading Atomic Habits, which was a great book. And he talks about stacking habits. And I think this is one of those things that has helped us, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and understanding that if you want the reward, then you got to do whatever the thing is. So, if I want to, let's say I want to, be able to do my 10 a.m. run on a Monday morning, I got to make sure that all my schedules are done before that. Or, just commit each day to getting up and saying, okay, I'm going to, Joe Friel is a great example. He gets up at 4:30 a.m. and writes every day. I mean, it's crazy to think that he does that at his age, but he's so consistent, right? And we see the stuff he produces. But it's really just committing and saying, okay, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do this ABC, and just that commitment. I can't. It's a discipline, right? It's something that has to be internal. But I think if you can write it down first of all and then commit to it, and I actually block out time on my calendar. It always pops up for me at the times that I'm supposed to be doing certain things. And if I get off track, I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing answering coach, athlete emails right now, not looking at, the web for something. So that kind of keeps me on track. So scheduling, I think, helps. That helps the process. And then, giving yourself a goal and saying, like, one of the things that I do is I don't take calls on Friday unless I really have to. But that's one of the things that if I get all my work done and I get all these processes done, Friday can be a free day for me. And if I don't have a lot of work to do, maybe I can go sneak in a ride or something like that. I don't advertise that, but it's something that, you try to just kind of sneak it under the radar. And if you get everything done, you give yourself a little reward like that. But I think it's just committing, writing it down, and then obviously having a little reminder, whether it's a calendar or something on your phone that pops up and says, these are the things you need to be doing right now.
Yeah, time management, it's a key one for sure. And the process piece, I will touch on in my presentation here in a little bit too. This is, I might filter this no, I won't. I haven't made the leap to canned plans for a few reasons. And you can tell by that word that's a negative connotation. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Do you find those users converting to one-on-one clients?
Yes. So, we've been doing this for a long time, and I would say that, almost 20% of our athletes come from buying a plan, seeing what we offer, even if it's over a 12-week period where they have some success, and they say to themselves, man, if I had a coach that wrote this plan, what could I even do better now? And we see this all the time. And I have buckets and buckets of testimonials from the plans where people are like, I can't believe I did this. All I did was follow the plan. And I got success at the end. And I hit, I was 30 minutes faster in my half marathon, or, an hour faster in my Ironman, or whatever it was. So I think that, if the plans are written correctly, I think you can have a lot of success with them. I rarely have had bad feedback on a plan. I really can't remember having bad feedback on it. I think, if it's written correctly and you do it right, they're really beneficial, and they help get athletes in your pipeline to get them in the door to become one-on-one athletes. And why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah, and that's another one where I'll fully agree with you there. I think there's a pathway that has developed over the past 20 years where people get into either multisport or cycling and realize they are quickly overloaded with data. They start to look for ways to deal with that data, and eventually, they may try an app, they may try something else, but a lot of the time they'll end up trying a training plan at some point. And it's a great way to try and see, and most will see some level of success with it. And then it's a matter of, it's how you transition them, how you follow up with them in those situations where I think it's actually worthwhile. And it's a piece that can really help that conversion ratio. So, okay, we're slowing down a little bit here. I wanted to circle back to another question from Michael. And because it's a much bigger picture, and it's a great transition to what I'm going to start talking about, which is, what do you see next for our industry? What will be the value?
Yeah, I think what's coming next is probably AI. And we're starting to see some of that. And my feeling on it is this: I think we can put all the numbers we want into a computer, and I think that's fantastic. It can tell us this, that, and the other. And, we have HRV now and all kinds of, whoops and the Oura Ring and all kinds of things. And my athletes are all over it. I have athletes that email me and say, I can't do my intervals today. My Whoop says my score is low. And I'm like, well, did you try? Like, just go out and see how you feel and see how that actually happens. I think that no matter, at the end of the day, just like a teacher in the classroom, I think people actually need coaches to tell them, to give them some confidence. As a coach, my first goal is always to get the athlete to do something they don't think they can do, and give them some belief, and be someone to believe in them. And I think that's the biggest role of a coach. And when you do that, people can really succeed in ways they never thought possible. I'm not sure the AI can do that. There may be some robotic people out there that just follow a plan or follow whatever the AI says to them that they can do, and they should go to the race and perform. I haven't seen it. I think that we're going to see more AI, but I'm not sure. I just think you're going to need coaches at some point to give you some real feedback and some love, right? And belief in coaching.
Yep, and I fully agree. We'll talk more about that in just a second. But for now, we've got one more that came in at the last second. Is there a resource for finding a contract that coaches can use to connect with an athlete?
That's a great question. I wrote everything from scratch, and I actually used an attorney. But yeah, is a coach? I don't know if it's a coach to coach contract or a coach to athlete contract.
I think it's sounding to me like coach to athlete contract.
Coach to athlete. I've never really done that. I usually just tell people to, give us 90 days and see if you don't see improvement, then that's fine. But usually by that point we can, make some good gains. But there's got to be stuff on the web. I haven't really looked into that. I don't do contracts with athletes. I just make it on a handshake deal, and I think that makes it just a little more real.
Ooh, and we had another good one come in here at the last minute. What coaching do you believe coaches need?
What coaches? Organizational skills, the number one. Time management, like you talked about, John. And maybe, for me, it was easy because I started out coaching swimming, and it was hands-on. And I always say this: if you can coach kids, you can coach anybody, because they are the challenge always, whether it's attention or whatever. But kids are easy because you could give them a skill to do and they'll nail it in 5 minutes. You give an adult something, it'll take them 5 weeks to get that same thing, just because just the way their bodies are built and programmed at that point. But I think every coach, no matter what level, could really use some coaching on how to coach in person, bedside manner, as you call it in the doctor industry. but just understanding you can't talk to every athlete the same way. I'm coaching my kids' baseball team right now, and I have a bunch of kids that are really good, and I have some kids that are really beginners, and I can't treat them the same. I treat them all fairly, but I can't all treat them the same. And I can't tell this one kid that he needs to get his head out of his butt and do X, but because he can handle it, and I can't tell that to the beginner kid because they'll go home crying, right? So you got to be able to massage it, but you got to be able to talk to people as a coach. I think that's kind of a skill we're starting to lose, and people are just really, if you look at Twitter and all this social media, people just in your face all the time versus just being a general good person and treating people the way you want to be treated. So I think some of that stuff is what coaches could be coached on.
Awesome. Again, another great segue piece. So with that, we're going to wrap up our Q&A with Mike, and we are going to transition to what hopefully some of you are here to hear about, which is the USAC coaching program. So as some of you hopefully heard during the last summit, there is definitely, there are definitely changes afoot. Number one is yes, bringing in a coaching ed and development director again. That position was previously held by Sam Callan, who came up with the bulk of the existing coaching education program. And then Kevin Dessart also kept that running. And really that program, for the most part, has been around for 20 years in its current iteration. That is a very long time. It was cutting edge when it was started. There were a lot of other national governing bodies, NGBs, that modeled their curriculum after what USA Cycling did. But that program definitely had some inherent issues in it that were kind of its own challenge. We'll get to those in a minute. But basically where we're at is this program has been in varying levels of neglect for at least 4 years. In the past 2 years, I need to give a big shout out to Parker Ullman, Jim Miller, Kelsey Erickson, and the rest of the crew at USAC that somehow kept it going while they all juggled, and I'm really not kidding here, sometimes 6 to 8 different roles that they were in charge of as USAC went through the very challenging pandemic and post-pandemic timeframe. So I really, really need to thank those guys for keeping things going. And needless to say, they were pretty excited to, yes, have me come on board and take some of those pieces out. I would say with those 4 years of neglect, we know we don't have the greatest, we know where we are. And I think most of you will agree that it is not the best situation, and we can do a lot better. So we've got at least some idea of where we're headed. It has not been defined to the point that, we can share any sort of details. It's got a long way to go. Circling back to Mike's presentation, we don't have a mission statement. We don't have a business plan for it. And so those are some key pieces that need to get in place before we really start to work on details with it. But we have kind of hypothesized a timeline, which is over the course of this year, we need to do what we can to resurrect the community that had developed for years under the USA Cycling coaching umbrella. It has eroded to the point where it's almost non-existent. We need to kind of map out that scope of work, create our project plan, a mission statement, and start engaging the resources we need to build a new coaching education program. Then next up over the course of 2023 is build that up and start to launch the lower levels of curriculum. And then moving on to 2024 and beyond is when we'll be building out the upper levels and moving into totally seeing our old program depart. The real challenge in this is how do we balance our existing current program with where we're going and how much time I can give to each one of those. I mentioned some inherent issues with the current program. The CEU program, if you were looking for a solid answer on what's going to happen, I still don't have that. I've only been in this role a month, and I can tell you, in trying to wrap my head around how to handle CEUs, it was very easy for me to identify that was a almost fatal flaw with the current program, because once you got to a certain number of coaches, the manual tracking of CEUs and coaching level changes and keeping track of everyone on a year-to-year basis was too much for any one person to execute, along with trying to work on a new program. So that current program has its big limitations. I am not positive on what will come out for the CEU aspect, but I will hit on that in a minute. So really the question is, yeah, how much support do we provide for a current program when we know it's going away over the next 2 years? And I am a big believer in, once we know the old one's going away, funneling as much time and resources, both internally with USAC and externally with all of you. I think it's important to funnel those resources towards that new program versus trying to maintain a legacy program for too long. So one of the pieces here is building or rebuilding a sense of community, hopefully building it back better than it ever has been before. There were 3 words that really came to my mind when I thought about this, and I do need to give a shout out to Chad Cheney at Durango Devo for reinforcing how important this community aspect is. I mean, for their program, and I think for a lot of junior development programs, that sense of community is a key aspect of any NGB, and it's something that was lacking for them in the previous program. But those words are transparency, trust, and dedication. I think as we start to move ahead, both with maintaining the existing program and developing the new one, we need to really keep up a high level of transparency with our members, and in doing so, really to build their trust in our organization and our process moving forward. And then we need to stick with it. We need to dedicate ourselves to our membership if we want our membership to be dedicated to us. So I can't, and no one at USAC can create value in a vacuum. We're not going to be able to build value for a coaching education program if we try to do it internally. And in a position that leaves us walled to the greater community outside and the coaching industry in general. I think one of the big things we've, as an industry, had an interesting challenge with over the decades is this concept of balance of power. I think it's one we can do immensely better with in terms of our education. I think it's also something we can do better with in terms of our relationships with each other. And so it's a piece that I'm going to push very hard on as we redevelop a sense of community, because I think there's always been this concept where the knowledge that we have as coaches is 100% our intellectual property, and it's our value, and we should not share it because we want to maintain that power we have. And I don't necessarily think that's a responsible way to do business and a responsible path forward. Hence that making sure we keep transparency, trust, and dedication at the foremost of our program development. I think we need to do that as a community, as an industry in general. I think the relationships we build with people are where our real value is at. And as a result, looking at that balance of power extensively over the next 10 years and how we talk about it, how we teach it, and how we work with it is going to be a key factor. We're not going to be able to improve the coaching industry as USAC without the involvement of the coaching industry. Basically, we have to, there's no way around it. We have to have involvement from, as many people as we can get involved, as many stakeholders, whether you're a USAC member or not. So I am going to strive to keep as much of this process open outside of USAC as possible, because I think in doing so, it will really help us create value for those who are outside of USAC who currently don't see it, because frankly, our current numbers are 700-ish members versus we hit a high at one time of 1,600. But I think internally, we all know the number of coaches that are out there coaching cycling are far beyond that. And we need to do a better job of getting them in. And we can't get them in unless we can listen to them and involve them in the process. So all that said, I think building this sense of community, enhancing the number of connections between the industry and the ease of access to that community and this process are our most powerful building blocks in developing a new program. And I'm very steadfast in trying to maintain those as much as possible as we move forward. And there are obviously going to be some limitations with that. But one of the key pieces, I know over the past 2 years, the word summit and quarterly conversation have gotten blurred. I want to just redefine that the word summit. I'm a big fan of the previous definition of that, where it was an in-person and somewhat virtually available event that really had I think, a pretty profound impact on the coaching industry, where basically it got together a lot of thought leaders. There were a lot of great presentations, but ultimately there ended up being a lot of good conversation, connections, and community building that took place at those summits. Knowing the limitations we have right now, I am going to be very hard pressed to get a summit anywhere close to the size and scale that we saw in 2016 in place. 2018 would be pushing it. That was a step down in size. But it's a piece that will come out shortly, where I'm trying to evaluate my time and focus over these next 6 to 8 months and how much of a role a summit will play in that. Personally, I would like to see it in some shape or form return. We still have the conference center in Colorado Springs, and it's a great resource, and I would love to see people return to use it, if nothing else, to work on creating that community aspect yet again. Let's see. So limitations. It's pretty much me. I've got some help internally from other departments in USAC, but ultimately knowing that it's one person and one goal for executing this, I think it's pretty easy for people to see with the size and scope that we're already at 700, that it's going to be very challenging unless I'm able to really allocate my time well. Again, another great segue from Mike and his talk. So one of the first things I plan on doing within the next 2 weeks is getting together a survey. And in that, I'm going to use that to help me guide a lot of my time and effort over these next 6 to 8 months. And it's going to involve that balance of how much time and energy needs to get put into the old program and how much needs to get put into developing the new program, potentially at an accelerated rate. So the biggest thing I can ask you guys is to do the survey. That would greatly help. It'll come out in a newsletter. And please take the few minutes to take and actually think about the questions and give us honest answers. And then if there's anybody else you know of I'm going to make sure this is an open survey that are outside of the USAC umbrella. Please share it outside of the USAC umbrella. The more responses we get, the better. I need to cast a really broad net with this. Another one is I plan on starting open Zoom office hours. So basically it's just a Zoom call. I'm there. Anybody can jump on, ask anything they want, and we can chat. It's a great dedicated hour, and I think it's a piece that may end up getting more form as we see what the demand is like. But for now, it's completely open-ended, and that'll also be out in the newsletter, a link, but it'll be Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And again, wide open, come with any questions, comments, concerns, and more importantly, I don't want this to be just a me conversation. If there's a group involved, it's a group conversation. It's not me answering questions. It's a chance to get on and have an interactive discussion with other coaches, hopefully, if we actually get some attendance. Next, let's try and, if at all possible, keep using coaches at usacycling.org as the primary email communication piece. That actually goes into our Zendesk system that Parker Ullman helped push through during the past 2 years. It's a much easier way for me to keep track of things and more importantly, be able to bring in outside resources if I need to. Regular email I'm going to get buried if I don't use other systems to communicate with people. Along those lines, another piece of that survey is going to be, I'm pretty convinced after the past 2 years that we can benefit from being on some type of teamwork and/or communication platform, whether that's Slack, whether that's Discord, whether that's Basecamp, whether that's something else. So expect to see that question in the survey. But please note one piece in particular, which is we use Slack internally, and I use it for several other projects. And so Slack already has a big leg up on everything else. But I think the ability for us as a group to be able to have a centralized communication platform is going to be very key as we move forward. Finally, yes, there will be a return of a semi-regular newsletter, and the first one containing all three of these pieces. And hopefully a little bit more. But again, this is going to be a longer term process. And so if you were expecting a lot of big answers, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon outside of, I know we need to come up with a revised CEU policy ASAP. But again, I need that feedback before we can go to work and start to establish that revised CEU policy. So at this stage, I want to do a couple of things. I want to thank Mike Ricci. I think based on how that interaction went, that was awesome. It was great to hear so many questions. It was great to hear Mike's take on a lot of the coaching business and how he has made himself sustainable over the years. I think it's very important for us as an industry to continually be looking outside our industry for answers and insights. So yes, having someone who is USAT Coach of the Year in 2014 may have seemed a little different for USAC, but I think you're going to start to see a lot more outside resources being brought in for conversations and content as we move forward. But with that content piece, we need to highlight our awesome relationship with Fast Talk Laboratories and what they have coming up in these next few months. So first off are going to be more pieces of the craft of coaching, including how to manage athletes in your coaching team. So a little bit of what we talked about today, but in a more in-depth manner with Joe. Workout recovery and adaptation And that's more in a general sense, but I think it's going to be a valuable topic for a lot of people to either gain knowledge on or review. And then there'll be another Q&A with Joe Friel at some point later on in the next 6 weeks. Fast Talk content within the Fast Talk Labs umbrella. There will be a mental strength pathway that is going to be launched. I think we'll all be pretty excited to see that based on some shortcomings of our existing programming in that department. Workouts of the month, so some more insights there on some various things you can take and use with your existing business. Respiratory training. This is an area I think that is going to continue to see enhanced focus as the things like the Moxie monitor come into play a little bit more, and we start to see more adoption of channels that can come into our .fit files. And it's something that can actually be used without data. It's a great piece for people to actually take some time and learn about, as it has a pretty decent impact. And then a bunch more from Fast Talk on physiological testing, both in person and remote. So with all that, I know we are a little bit ahead of schedule. No, we're right on schedule. So I talked for just long enough. I am going to be doing my own questions. And when should we be watching for it? I've started the questions. I need to run them through various approvals internally, and then I need to get some thoughts from people externally. I don't want to take your time unless I've put enough time into it that I feel like it's really going to be valuable. So those are going to pop up again. You'll see that in the newsletter end of next week or sometime the following week. So by the middle of May, we should have it out. Question from Stuart. CEUs for this meeting. Hopefully I answered that. I believe we had published 3 CEUs for quarterly conversations. And as we develop that policy, yes, that will be accommodated for. And so again, I think something hopefully everybody has noticed is the CEU program has been suffering immensely in these past 2 years specifically. So it's going to be very challenging to get this policy together and unleashed for everybody. Let's see. Oh, Kevin Dessart, yes. So I'm reading through a comment here. So Kevin really was on the right track. A piece that I think is essential for everybody to know is USAC started seeing a very significant decrease in membership starting in that same time frame that I started looking outside of the coaching industry for work. And they had to make a lot of very challenging decisions. One of those was Kevin's role was broadened significantly beyond just coaching. And so for 2 years, he was already into that state of having to juggle multiple positions. And one of the factors in me taking this role was some assurances that this role, living under the athletics department, would not get farmed to another department and would also be in place outside of the typical 4-year Olympic cycles. I think a lot of you know that those are factors that have been challenging for athletics over the years. Yes, I hope I don't get buried in stuff too. Somebody was also commenting on that aspect. Moving along. Yes, so when Jim came back on in 20, coaching was being managed by a collective group. And I think I mentioned most of those individuals. They were doing the best they could. That group changed composition on a regular basis just because of fluctuations in internal staffing. I think what you're seeing now, I'm actually one of the earlier people in this, is USAC stabilizing their workforce and really trying to move forward with a growth pattern that is sustainable And I think that's going to be a piece that's going to be essential as we continue to kind of move forward. And with that, it looks like we are slowly wrapping up chat-wise. Lapsed licenses and providing a pathway to re-entry and re-engagement. I think this immediately, so the question is, reach out to lapsed licenses to basically get them back into the fold. At this stage, I would not be comfortable bringing making a big push to bring people back into our existing program. I would feel much more comfortable providing them the pathway into a new program. And whether there's a midway between those two, I'm guessing there is, but until we get a little farther along, as in somewhere we have a mission statement, we have a business plan, I don't necessarily know if really making a push with lapsed licenses is a good way to go. I would rather have it be organic, where we really are making some progress with developing community and the industry starts to see some potential value with where we're headed and people wanting to be a part of that, versus a push out of, hey, come back because we're trying to do something different. I would much rather have it be walking the walk versus just talking the talk. Scrolling through if there's any more. This was advertised as a summit and then switched to a conversation. Yes, that was part of my onboarding learning hurdles, is this was already kind of being pushed out as a summit before I really realized that it was definitely a conversation. And so I will take full blame on that one. But what I'm really hoping is that as these quarterly conversations develop, you start to see a little bit more value in attending them. Mike has been an awesome presenter for this conversation, and I hope, based on how it went, that we do turn it into more of a conversation going forward versus just a lecture style. And so we'll stand by as we start to develop those pieces. Let me see. Yes, I understand it's probably been a little confusing for everybody during this time frame. I'm doing my best to try and get us to the point where we have a very consolidated communication pattern, and that it's something it's much easier to keep track of. And scrolling through our comments. Yeah. Okay, people have the AI questions come in, and I will probably make this the last one. And it's a little bit more of where is this going that Mike Norton asked. I really see that the coaching industry has had 3 separate stages thus far, and stage 1 was very traditional, and that was where we had time and perceived exertion as data points. It was heavily dependent on relationships and experience. It may not have been highlighted at that, but I think most sports had a foundational piece where to be a good coach, you had to have been a good athlete. That was a key aspect of it. And along came the advent of power meters, GPS, and other data channels that all of us, and very suddenly, overwhelmed not just athletes, but coaches. And all of those additional data channels really gave rapid rise to a commercial coaching industry in cycling, and then correspondingly in multisport. And that's what I kind of consider 2.0 of coaching. And I think our existing program did a decent job of addressing the early needs in 2.0. But as 2.0 is kind of advanced into its later stages and we start looking at 3.0, that's where the program is definitely lacking. 3.0 is what I think we've kind of alluded to today, and it's great to hear where Mike's at with this, which is as we start to look at automation playing some role in the future of coaching, I think we all have, I think almost everyone has some level of their deliverable value to customers based around a training plan. And I see that decreasing in value as we hit 3.0, and 3.0 is where we actually have a fairly good automation level in place for data analysis and training plan generation. And in that time frame, it's going to be essential that we focus back to 1.0 on a lot of the foundational roots, but with a lot of the knowledge base that has come about in the past 30 years. And that's where we're able to teach more. And as coaches, we're able to learn a lot more about who we are, about who our customers are, and about how we can best create relationships to better those athletes. There's social emotional learning that has made immense leaps in the past few decades. The balance of power, which was left out of a lot of, in fact, most NGB's coaching education, is all of a sudden now mandated through Safe Sport. But I think we can do a much better job spearheading that in advance through education versus a 90-minute course once a year where it's just alluded to. And then most of all, yes, just refocusing on what we can do with our relationships, not just our knowledge base. So scrolling through here, virtual option, yes, as today has proved. Okay, I think unless there are any more questions, I'm slowly going to wrap up here. I never got asked the one question I was hoping somebody would, but why on earth would you take this job? Especially since I was able to watch Sam and Kevin take this role and do an incredible amount of good with it, but also knowing how challenging the current situation is. And I did not take this role lightly or easily. I actually had another option that I made it very challenging to really dive into this. And it wasn't necessarily the concept of just building a new coaching education platform that was enticing. I think for me, there's a foundational piece of this, which is as a sport, coaches are the most engaged and the most influential members that we have. And having the position to help influence that group and help them steer in a prosperous direction for the future made me realize that in a lot of ways, and it's not going to be, I think, second nature to most people, that I realized we could really work together to literally, and I mean this very literally, change the face of cycling in the US and grow the sport. I think there's a lot we can do. There's a long path ahead to do it, but I hope you'll bear with me and join me in the journey along the way. And so with that, I want to say thanks to everybody for attending and listening to the very end. Thanks again to Mike and Fast Talk. It is great to have partners like this that are able to come on and help us create good content for you. And we look forward to many more relationships like this in the future. With that, thanks again, everybody. And we will see you guys either at an office hours, on a platform, or at the next quarterly conversation.